You know, one of the biggest mistakes we make in life is living for applause. We crave it like oxygen. We want somebody to pat us on the back and say, "Good job." We scroll through social media waiting for likes, waiting for comments, waiting for some external confirmation that we're enough. But let me tell you something. You'll never be free if you're addicted to approval, because the same people clapping for you today can turn around and criticize you tomorrow. And if your worth is tied to their noise, then you're nothing more than a puppet on their strings. The real truth is this: your value is not something the world can give you because it was never theirs to give. Think about that. You were born valuable. Before you had achievements, before you had a resume, before you had possessions, you already had worth. But somewhere along the way, society taught you to trade your identity for validation. They told you if you look like this, you'll be enough. If you own this, you'll be respected. If you accomplish that, you'll finally matter. And so you started chasing. Chasing approval, chasing applause, chasing some gold star from people who don't even know themselves. And here's the tragedy. You can spend your whole life running after people's acceptance and still never catch it. Why? Because validation from others is a moving target. It keeps shifting. You think you've arrived, but the bar keeps rising. One minute they love you, the next minute they forget you. If you don't anchor yourself internally, you'll spend your life as a shadow, fading in and out depending on how brightly someone else's spotlight shines on you. Now let's take this deeper. Psychologists talk about the concept of extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is when you do something for the reward: money, praise, approval. Intrinsic motivation is when you do it because it aligns with who you are, because it fulfills you from within. Most people spend their lives trapped in the extrinsic category. They're dancing for the applause, grinding for the title, starving for recognition. But the people who actually feel free, the people who walk into a room with real power, they operate from the intrinsic. They don't need a crowd to tell them they're great. They walk in knowing it, and let me tell you, that kind of confidence, it's unshakable. It's the kind that makes people stop and pay attention. Not because you begged for their attention, but because you carry yourself with a self-respect that demands it. See, when you stop seeking external validation, you start radiating internal certainty. And that's magnetic. That's how you move from being overlooked to being unforgettable. But here's the hard truth. You've got to let go of some people's opinions if you ever want to rise. Some of you are carrying chains made out of words that were spoken years ago. Somebody told you you weren't enough, and you've been living like that's true. Somebody criticized your dream, and you've been shrinking yourself ever since. Let me ask you, why do you give so much weight to people who don't carry the responsibility of living your life? Why are you handing the pen of your story to people who don't even know the plot? You need to hear me on this. Your worth is non-negotiable. It doesn't go up when someone applauds you, and it doesn't go down when someone rejects you. You're not a stock that rises and falls on the market of other people's opinions. You are the constant, and once you internalize that, once you stop chasing, you reclaim your power. Think about the people you admire most, the leaders, the innovators, the ones who changed the game. Do you think they got there by asking for permission to be themselves? No, they were ridiculed, doubted, dismissed, and they kept moving. Why? Because their sense of value didn't come from the crowd, it came from within. And that's why the crowd eventually had to catch up to them. So, I'll say this plainly. Stop begging people to see you. Stop exhausting yourself trying to please those who will never be satisfied. Start standing firm in who you are, flaws and all, gifts and all, vision and all. The moment you stop chasing external validation, you create space for something better. Self-respect, self-trust, and the kind of focus that can actually change your life. And I want to leave you with this thought. Applause fades, opinions shift, and people forget. But self-worth is permanent. Don't spend your life chasing temporary approval when you already carry eternal value. If your value is already within you, then the next step is learning how to protect it. And the way you protect it is by guarding your energy and your attention. See, people don't realize how valuable those two things are. You think your money is your greatest asset, but it's not. You think it's your talent, your connections, your opportunities. No, the real currency of your life is your focus. Because wherever your attention goes, your energy flows. And wherever your energy flows, that's where your life grows. But here's the danger. We live in a world that's constantly trying to hijack our focus. Distractions are everywhere. Your phone buzzes, your notifications ping, people are pulling on you from every direction. And before you know it, you've spent your entire day giving your best energy to things that don't move your life forward 1 inch. Then you wonder why you feel drained, why you feel stuck, why you feel like you're living on empty. It's not because you don't have energy. It's because you're wasting it on things that don't deserve it. Let me break it down to you. Attention is like sunlight. If you spread it thin across everything, nothing grows strong. But if you focus that light, concentrate it, you can burn through steel. That's the power of focus. That's why successful people are so protective of their time and energy. They know that every yes is also a no to something else, so they choose wisely. They don't just give their attention to every drama, every distraction, every meaningless scroll. They invest it in the things that align with their vision. Now, let's bring some psychology into this. Scientists talk about something called decision fatigue. The more you scatter your attention across meaningless choices, the less mental energy you have left for the decisions that actually matter. That's why you can start your day strong, but by evening you're exhausted, not because you worked so hard, but because you let distractions nickel and dime your focus away. You gave your energy to too many little things, and now you've got nothing left for the big things. And this isn't just about time management, it's about self-respect. Every time you let someone waste your energy, every time you give your attention to nonsense, you're sending yourself a message: my focus isn't valuable. But the moment you start guarding it, the moment you start saying, no, my attention is expensive, you can't just have it, that's when everything shifts, because your energy is not charity. You don't owe it to everyone. You don't owe it to every situation. You owe it to yourself, to your growth, to your future. Think about it. How many dreams have died not because someone lacked talent, but because they lacked focus? How many people had the ability, had the vision, but they wasted too much time on gossip, on bitterness, on things that kept them stuck? Energy mismanaged is potential wasted, and some of you are living beneath your potential, not because you're incapable, but because you're distracted. And I'll tell you something else: protecting your energy also means protecting it from people. Because let's be real, some people are energy drainers. They thrive on chaos, they live off drama, and if you let them, they'll make you the battery that powers their dysfunction. You've got to stop letting people plug into you like you're a charging station. If they're not adding peace, vision, or growth to your life, you've got to unplug. That doesn't mean you stop caring, but it does mean you stop carrying. Now, I know somebody is thinking, well, isn't that selfish? No, it's stewardship. You can't pour into others if you're empty. You can't change the world if you're constantly drained. Protecting your energy isn't about shutting people out. It's about making sure you're full enough to give from a place of strength, not exhaustion. When you focus your energy on the right things, you don't just elevate your own life. You become a light for others too. So here's the challenge: audit your focus. Look at where your attention is going on a daily basis. How much of it is feeding your future, and how much of it is feeding your distractions? Because at the end of the day, life doesn't just take your time. It takes your energy. And once your energy is gone, you don't get it back. Let me leave you with this. Your attention is your most valuable possession. Stop giving it away cheap. Protect it, direct it, and invest it in the things that make you stronger. Because when you guard your focus, you guard your future. We've talked about protecting your focus because where your attention goes, your life follows. But here's the next step. You've got to set standards, not just goals. Now, that might sound like the same thing, but it's not. A goal is something you want to achieve. A standard is the level you refuse to fall beneath. Goals inspire you, but standards define you. See, everybody has goals. You can ask almost anyone, what do you want? And they'll tell you, they want success, they want peace, they want financial freedom, they want love. That's easy to say, but the real question isn't what you want. It's what you're willing to demand from yourself and from the life you're living. That's where standards come in. Let me explain it this way. A goal says, I want to be healthy. A standard says, I don't put poison in my body. I move my body daily. That's just who I am. A goal says, I want to be successful. A standard says, I refuse to waste my time on things that don't build me. I refuse to keep company that drags me down. You see the difference? Goals are about intention. Standards are about identity. The truth is, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your standards. That's why some people set the same resolutions every year and never change. Because goals live on paper, but standards live in your behavior. Standards are what you practice when nobody's watching. Standards are the boundaries you enforce even when it costs you comfort. Standards are the choices you make in the dark that eventually show up in the light. And here's where people struggle, because setting standards means drawing lines. It means saying, I won't accept less than this from myself or from anyone around me. That can be uncomfortable. It can even make people angry. But let me ask you this. How much of your energy has been drained by tolerating things beneath you? How much of your life has been wasted on relationships, habits, and situations that never should have made it past your standards? The moment you raise your standards, you stop negotiating your worth. Philosophers talk about the concept of virtue ethics, the idea that who you are is defined by the consistent habits you practice, not by the occasional goals you achieve. In other words, greatness isn't a one-time event, it's a lifestyle. You can't just want better, you have to live better. You can't just dream about respect, you have to demand it by how you carry yourself. And let me be clear, standards aren't about arrogance, they're about alignment. They keep you from living beneath your calling. When you set standards, you create an environment where your goals actually have a chance to grow. Because if your standards are low, your goals don't matter. You can't build a skyscraper on a weak foundation. Think about people you admire, the ones who are disciplined, respected, and impactful. What sets them apart isn't just what they aim for, it's what they refuse to tolerate. They have standards for their time, their work ethic, their relationships, their health. They don't just hope for success, they live in a way that makes success inevitable. So let me talk to you directly. You don't have to lower your standards just because people around you are comfortable living small. If anything, raising your standards might mean walking alone for a while. But I'd rather be alone at a high standard than surrounded at a low one. Because the truth is, the right people, the right opportunities, the right doors, they only show up when your standards rise high enough to match them. You might be thinking, well, what if I fail? What if I can't keep that standard? Let me tell you, failure isn't when you fall short. Failure is when you accept less than you're capable of and call it good enough. Falling is part of the process, but lowering your standards is surrender. So here's the challenge. Stop asking, what do I want? And start asking, what will I no longer accept? Draw the line, raise the bar. And then live like it's non-negotiable. Because when you set standards, you don't just change your habits. You change your identity. And when your identity changes, your entire life has no choice but to rise with it. Let me leave you with this. Goals are dreams of the future, but standards are the rules of today. If you raise your standards, your goals won't just be possible, they'll be inevitable. When you raise your standards, something interesting happens. Some people fall away. Some relationships won't survive the new lines you've drawn. Some environments won't fit the new person you're becoming. And in that space, you're going to find yourself alone. And that's where most people panic. They think solitude is punishment. They think being by themselves is proof that something's wrong with them. But let me tell you, solitude isn't punishment. It's power. We live in a culture that's addicted to noise. The moment silence hits, people rush to fill it. They turn on the TV, they scroll, they call someone, they drown themselves in chatter, because being alone makes them uncomfortable. Why? Because when you're alone, there's no distraction from yourself. You're forced to face your thoughts, your fears, your insecurities, and a lot of people don't want to do that. They'd rather drown it out with noise than sit in the truth of their own reflection. But here's the secret. Growth happens in silence. Clarity comes in solitude. All the noise around you, all the opinions, all the expectations, they clutter your mind. But when you pull away, when you sit with yourself, that's when the fog clears. That's when you actually hear your own voice, not just the echo of everyone else's. Think about it. Some of the most powerful moments in history happened in solitude. Prophets went to the wilderness. Leaders stepped away before they led nations. Innovators withdrew before they created. Solitude has always been the birthplace of clarity. It's where vision is sharpened, where strength is built, where you stop chasing and start attracting. See, when you can be comfortable with yourself, you stop settling. You stop tolerating people who only fill space but don't add value. Because here's the truth. Loneliness isn't being without people. Loneliness is being surrounded by the wrong people and still feeling unseen. Solitude, on the other hand, is when you're alone but at peace, because you've discovered your own company is enough. And once you reach that level, you stop being desperate. You stop begging for attention. You stop compromising your standards just to avoid being by yourself. And let's be real, most of the mistakes we regret came from being afraid of solitude. We rushed into relationships that weren't right. We stayed in circles that drained us. We said yes when we should have said no, all because we were scared of sitting alone. But here's the shift: when you embrace solitude, you flip that fear into strength. You realize, I don't need to be surrounded to be secure. I don't need constant company to feel complete. I am whole even when it's just me. Philosophers talk about the idea of self-reliance, not in the sense of isolation, but in the sense of grounding yourself so deeply in your own identity that you're not swayed by the crowd. That's what solitude gives you. It gives you the ability to hear your own truth so clearly that when you step back into the world, you're not easily manipulated. You're not desperate for approval. You're not afraid of walking alone, because you've already proven to yourself that you can. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying live life cut off from everybody. We're built for connection. We need community. But here's the key. You should choose relationships out of strength, not desperation. Solitude teaches you that. It teaches you how to love your own company so much that when you do let people in, it's because they add to your peace, not because you're scared of losing it. So let me put it like this. Solitude is where you build the muscle of self-worth. It's your training ground. It's where you strip away the noise, the fake support, the empty validation, and you discover what you really believe, what you really want, and who you really are. And once you have that, you walk differently. You speak differently. You don't chase, you attract, because people can feel when someone is grounded in themselves. It's magnetic. So don't run from solitude. Don't treat it like punishment. Step into it like preparation. Because the truth is, you'll never step into your power until you learn to stand by yourself. And let me leave you with this. Solitude doesn't make you weaker, it makes you unshakable. When you can stand alone, you'll never again be afraid of who stands with you or who walks away. Once you've learned how to stand strong in solitude, you face the next challenge. What do you do with that time, that space, that clarity? And the answer is simple but life-changing. You invest in your growth relentlessly, not casually, not when it's convenient, not when you feel like it. Relentlessly. Because the truth is, if you want the world to see your value, you've got to make sure you're constantly adding to it. Now, hear me right. Growth isn't just about chasing success. Growth is about refusing to stay the same. It's about making a decision that the person you are today will not be the same person 6 months from now. Because if you're not growing, you're not living. You're just existing, and existing is the slowest way to die. Most people get stuck because they stop growing the moment life gets comfortable. They graduate, they get the job, they settle into the routine, and then they stop feeding their mind, stop stretching their potential, stop challenging themselves, and then they wonder why they feel stuck. Stagnation is always the result of neglected growth. Psychologists talk about something called a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. A fixed mindset says, "This is who I am, this is what I know, and this is all I'll ever be." A growth mindset says, "I can always learn, I can always evolve, I can always improve." The difference between those two ways of thinking determines your entire life, because a fixed mindset builds walls, while a growth mindset builds doors. And here's what you've got to understand. Growth is never convenient. It will cost you. It will cost your time, your comfort, your habits, maybe even some relationships. But every investment you make in yourself multiplies. Read the books, take the class, study your craft, learn from people who know more than you. Every hour you put into yourself is a seed, and one day that seed becomes fruit. Think about it this way: if you had $1 million, you wouldn't just leave it lying around, you'd invest it so it multiplies. Well, your mind, your skills, your character, those are worth far more than money. So why do we treat them like they're disposable? Why do we waste time scrolling, gossiping, or just sitting still when we could be sharpening the very thing that creates every opportunity in our lives, ourselves? Now let's go even deeper. Growth isn't just about knowledge, it's about self-awareness. It's about asking yourself hard questions. What am I afraid of? What weaknesses am I ignoring? What patterns keep showing up in my life? Growth isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it forces you to confront parts of yourself you'd rather keep hidden. But that's where the real transformation happens, because you can't fix what you refuse to face. And don't confuse growth with perfection. This isn't about trying to become flawless. It's about becoming better than you were yesterday. It's about making sure the person you are today is wiser, stronger, and more focused than the person you were last year. Progress, not perfection, that's growth. Here's the other thing. Growth attracts respect. When people see you investing in yourself, when they see you leveling up, you don't have to convince them of your value. They see it. You carry yourself differently. Your words carry more weight. Your presence commands more attention. Why? Because people can tell when someone has done the work. Growth shines through, and let me say this. If you don't invest in yourself, don't be surprised when nobody else does. The world reflects what you project. If you treat your potential cheaply, so will everyone else. But when you show that you take your own growth seriously, you set the standard for how others treat you. So stop waiting for opportunities to make you valuable. Stop waiting for someone to come along and rescue your potential. Start planting seeds daily. Read, learn, build, reflect, fail, and try again. That's how you create momentum. That's how you make yourself undeniable. Because at the end of the day, growth is the one investment that never loses value. Markets crash, jobs change, people come and go. But what you build in yourself is yours forever. Your skills, your wisdom, your resilience, nobody can take that from you. So let me leave you with this. Stop treating your growth like an option. Treat it like oxygen. Feed your mind, feed your spirit, feed your future. Because when you invest relentlessly in yourself, you become the kind of person who doesn't chase opportunities, opportunities chase you. Now, after you've learned to invest in yourself, there's one final trap you have to avoid if you really want to live free and powerful. And that's comparison. See, nothing steals joy, nothing steals focus, nothing steals momentum quite like looking at somebody else's lane and forgetting your own. You can spend your whole life winning your race, but if you're watching theirs, you'll always feel behind. And that's the tragedy. So many people aren't even competing with their own potential. They're competing with someone else's highlight reel. They're measuring their value by somebody else's timeline. They're comparing their chapter 2 to somebody else's chapter 20. And let me tell you, that is a losing game every single time. Because no matter how far you go, there will always be someone richer, someone fitter, someone louder, someone with more attention. If you let comparison define you, you'll never feel enough, even when you're overflowing. But purpose breaks that cycle. Purpose says, I wasn't put here to copy anyone else. I wasn't put here to match their path. I was put here to walk my own. When you live from purpose, you stop asking, am I ahead of them? And you start asking, am I aligned with what I was called to do? That's a completely different standard, because comparison is about competition, but purpose is about direction. Think about this. Two people can run the same distance, but if they're running in opposite directions, they're not actually competing. They're just moving. That's life. Somebody else's lane might look similar to yours, but it's not your assignment. You've got a lane with your name on it, and when you understand that, you stop looking sideways and start looking forward. Now let me put some psychology on this. Comparison lives in the ego. The ego thrives on being better than, faster than, richer than, but purpose lives in the spirit. Purpose isn't about being superior, it's about being authentic. That's why people who chase comparison burn out, but people who chase purpose light up. You've seen it before. Someone doing something that doesn't make sense on paper, but you can feel it's what they were born to do. That's the energy of purpose, and here's what makes it powerful. When you live in purpose, you create a ripple. People feel it. You don't have to sell yourself. You don't have to beg for respect. You don't have to fake your way through. Your purpose speaks for you. It draws the right people, it opens the right doors, and it gives you strength to push through seasons that comparison would have made you quit. Because let's be real, comparison makes you exhausted. It's never-ending. It whispers, you're not enough, you're behind, you'll never catch up. But purpose whispers something different. It says, keep going. This is bigger than you. Stay the course. And that's the voice you need to follow, because comparison will break you down, but purpose will build you up. I'll tell you something I've learned. Your greatest peace comes the moment you stop competing with people and start competing with yourself. Yesterday's you is your only competition. If you're growing, if you're improving, if you're moving in alignment with your calling, you're winning. That's it. That's the whole game. And yes, there will be people ahead of you, and there will be people behind you. But that doesn't matter, because the only thing that matters is whether you're walking in your own lane with integrity, discipline, and vision. Purpose is the anchor that keeps you from drifting into envy, jealousy, and insecurity. Purpose is the compass that points you toward meaning, even when life feels chaotic. So stop asking, am I as good as them? And start asking, am I being faithful to my assignment? Because the truth is, you can win the world's race and still lose your soul if you're running in the wrong direction. But when you run in purpose, even small steps feel like victory. And I want you to take this with you. Your purpose has no rival. Nobody else can do what you're here to do in the way you were meant to do it. That's why comparison is not only toxic, it's pointless. It's like a sunflower envying a rose. Both bloom, both shine, but neither was created to outdo the other. They were created to be themselves. So let me leave you with this. Comparison is the thief of joy, but purpose is the source of power. Choose purpose, because when you stop living to compete and start living to contribute, you stop chasing life, and life starts chasing you.